Hey everybody, this is going to be a preview to our reading of the novel Animal Farm by George Orwell. Going to try and make it as quick as possible. The only things that are going to slow it down are going to be a couple of videos, but the longest one is just a few minutes. But just want to give everyone a look as to what the book is going to be about, what are some of the things we're going to be talking about as we read it, and hopefully just make it easier to understand overall. So first of all, the type of genre the Animal Farm would be, you could really throw it into two different categories. First would be dystopia or dystopian, and this just means like everything is terrible. The place this is going to cover a place where everything is as bad as it can be, all right? It might not start out that way, but it's going to get there. And it is also an allegory. This is really important. This is one of the biggest lenses we're going to be looking through as we read this book. All the characters and all the events, everything that happens in this book is going to symbolize or represent something else with deeper meaning. You'll get to that more in a little bit. But so like we said, written by George Orwell from England. It was published in 1945, and it is an allegory for the Russian Revolution, the Stalin era, and World War II. So we're going to be learning a little bit about that. That is Joseph Stalin. This is George Orwell. Different people, very much so. So what makes it an allegory is that it has lots of allusions. Notice we see that root at the beginning of both words. And so an allusion is basically a reference to something. Oftentimes it's in literature, but you're going to see a lot of allusions to historical figures from the Russian Revolution in this. So you can see that this song by Blake Shelton has some basis and some references to this song by Charlie Daniels. I'm not a big country guy, but that's just something for you to look at if you're interested in. We are actually going to skip this video. If you are in a class that's using these slides, you're more than welcome to watch it. It's about 4 minutes. It's going to give you a ton of things about Joseph Stalin. If you're participating in class, you should probably see this at some point. But pretty much everything that's in this video we will talk about later. So Stalin, you're going to hear words that are typically associated with him, and some of those are going to be terror, dictator, tyrant, oppressive. Notice, none of those are positive. But when this dude died, everyone was really sad in Russia. But if he's such a bad guy, if he's a dictator and he's terrorizing people and he's oppressive, why were people sad? That is a huge question that we're going to be looking at today. So some of the basics with Animal Farm, we already talked about it being dystopian and what that means, and an allegory along with what that means. Really, this is going to be something that focuses on corruption of leadership, okay? So you're going to be seeing how the corruption in the book parallels the corruption in the Russian Revolution and with this guy right here. We're also going to be seeing this taking place with animals instead of people. So although Animal Farm isn't a true story, it represents something that really happened, and that's called the Russian Revolution, which you kind of see here. We'll talk more about that in a sec, like right now. So the beginnings of the Russian Revolution, there was no real specific goal. There was just a lot of unrest. People were unhappy with the current leader. This is a title, so this is not a name. You say it Tsar, so it's like a silent C. So this would be Czar Nicholas II, and he was the leader of Russia in 1917. Okay, so this is well before World War II. February 23rd, 1917, workers took to the streets. They were very unhappy about how the country was being run. There wasn't enough food for people. And really in just a matter of a few days, everything shut down and everyone was joining the protests. So Tsar Nicholas, this fella right here, was catching a lot of heat. So you can see some of the protests going on here in this photo. And so this led to the Russian Revolution. This is the Russian flag symbol here. So I am going to play this video. It's about 3 minutes. It's going to give you a nice overview of what the Russian Revolution entailed and what it was like. So I'm going to play this, and then we will talk more about it. It's about 3 minutes.
The Russian Revolution. The year is 1914. World War I had begun, and Russia was at war with Germany. The working class and the peasants make up the Russian army. However, they are not well equipped or trained for the battles to come. The year is now 1917. Millions of Russians had been either killed or wounded. The Russian people were angry at Tsar Nicholas II for getting Russia into the war, and several other reasons, including the Tsar taking personal command of the army, Rasputin's power over the royal family, food shortages, and growing political opposition. The first revolution came about in February 1917 on the Julian calendar in Petrograd, which was the capital of Imperial Russia. Demonstrators protested about the lack of bread due to rationing and were soon joined by striking workers. The army was called upon to suppress the uprising. Several protesters were shot and killed by the soldiers. However, many refused to open fire. The army, too, it seemed, had mutinied against the Tsar. The Petrograd Soviet was the city council for workers and soldiers. Now, more and more workers and soldiers elected people to it in order to represent their demands. The Tsar abdicated, bringing an end to the Tsarist autocracy, and a new government took over. This government was run by two political parties, the Petrograd Soviet and the Provisional Government. The Bolshevik Revolution. The Provisional Government was also unpopular. It made the decision to remain in the war and failed to give land to the peasants. Vladimir Lenin and the Bolsheviks were a faction of the Marxist Russian Social Democratic Labor Party, and eventually became the Communist Party of the Soviet Union. He had a simple slogan which would appeal to the people and the Petrograd Soviet: peace, bread, and land. Peace, the end of Russia's involvement in World War I. Bread, solving food shortages. And land, which would go to the peasants. He also stated all power to the Soviets, meaning that he would seize power in the name of the Soviet. On November 6 and 7, 1917, or October 24 and 25 on the Julian calendar, the Bolsheviks, led by Lenin, launched a coup d'etat against the Provisional Government. They stormed the Winter Palace and arrested the Provisional Government, putting themselves in charge of Russia's government. After the revolution, the Bolshevik government exited the war by signing a peace treaty with Germany called the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk. A civil war would erupt in 1918 by those who were against the new Bolshevik government, the White Army, and the Bolsheviks themselves, the Red Army. Subscribe to see more history videos. Get Simple History, the Russian Revolution, and...
All right, cool. So, a lot of new terms, a lot of new people in that video. We're gonna break that all down. To be honest, Animal Farm, the story itself is not hard to understand. It's a very simple story. The more complex part of it is going to be figuring out how it relates to this Russian Revolution, seeing that comparison and figuring out who represents what. So that's what we're going to talk about here. Plant some seeds and as that goes, so that as we read, we fully understand what's going on. So communism. This fella here, Karl Marx, all right, with the big beard. Students often say that's Santa Claus. That would not be him. So Karl Marx, he invented the idea of communism, all right? So he's like the creator of this idea, this mindset. He had a slogan, workers of the world unite, take over the government. What he was striving for, everyone is equal, every single person, regardless of their status, who they are, what they do. But the government owns everything, but the people own the government. So in reality, people own everything. He needed to use propaganda to persuade people to side with him. We're going to talk about what propaganda is, but basically he's trying to convince people to join him. He needed to figure out ways how. It's that Russian symbol again, persuasion. So, process of guiding oneself or another towards the adoption of an idea, attitude, or action. Basically, it's just convincing someone to agree with you. Whatever you're convincing them of, that's irrelevant. But just this idea of convincing someone to agree with whatever you're saying or whatever you're doing or whatever you're thinking. You see this every day, all the time. And really everyone throughout history has, all right? And a lot of the times you're seeing it on the good old TV. You see it with ads, Nike, Apple, McDonald's. There's a reason these things are popular. It's not necessarily because they're always the best. It's because they're the best at persuading you, not because they have the best products. So let's look at this one. This is for something you probably are not familiar with.
Hey, kid. Yeah, come on.
Ameriquest Mortgage, proud sponsor of the NFL.
There we go. All right. So, what is Ameriquest trying to persuade you of here? What's their message to you? Well, don't judge too quickly. It says it at the end of the commercial. We're not going to judge you. All right? And this is just a funny way to make it stick. It's a mortgage company, so they offer loans. And they're saying like, "Oh, like whatever your credit is, we're not going to judge you. We're going to help you out." All right? So their purpose is to get business. They're trying to persuade you to go to them because they're not going to judge you. They're going to make it easy for you. Regardless of what your background is, okay? So that's just a very simple form of persuasion. And really, it's pretty catchy because you're going to remember that. That's the commercial where the guy looks like he killed the cat, okay? Here's another one for Coke with The Simpsons.
Another billionaire is broke. C. Montgomery Burns has lost his entire fortune, estimated at $3 billion.
Sorry, Coke.
Perfect. Thanks, Simpsons. All right, so Coca-Cola.
Another billionaire is broke.
What are they trying to persuade you of? Well, so if you don't know The Simpsons, this one might be a little tougher, but basically Mr. Burns is this rich guy. He only does what he wants. He doesn't care about other people. He doesn't help people. And then he goes broke and no one cares. And then what happens to him? What's our message? Coke's going to make you happy. He literally just lost billions of dollars and he's feeling down in the dumps. And all it takes to make him feel happy is a Coca-Cola. So it's like, hey, if you had a bad day, you probably didn't lose billions. So if Mr. Burns can drink a Coke and feel better, so can you. All right? So simple persuasion. Obviously, these aren't as monumental as convincing people of communism and Marxism and all that stuff, but you get the picture. You see this stuff all the time. You're constantly being influenced, okay? So tying persuasion in with propaganda. This is the idea of spreading ideas, info, rumors. You're trying to help or hurt an institution, a cause, or a person, all right? You see this in the Russian Revolution. You see this with Marxism, all right? This is the reason that people were so sad when Stalin, a terrible person, died. So some forms of propaganda, you can see it in videos, pictures, posters, speeches, anything that's able to spread information, all right? There's very few limits to this. Here's a classic one, the Uncle Sam, right? The poster, that's propaganda, spreading the idea of patriotism. You can see it in music, see it in speech. We'll do a quick one with Donald Duck for some US propaganda. So this is older, obviously.
Hey day, hey day. Yes,
Payday. Millions of dollars pouring into the hands of the American worker. Now, in the mind of the average worker live two separate personalities. One, the thrifty.
Wait a bit, laddie. You're going to save a bit of that, aren't you? Sure.
Oftentimes, idle money burns a hole in your pocket, which brings out the other personality. The spendthrift.
Hi, big shot. Come on with me. I'll show you how to spend your dough. I got a couple of good dates. But, laddie, I've got some better dates.
Important ones, too. When every American should pay his or her income tax gladly and proudly. This year, thanks to Hitler and Hirohito, taxes are higher than ever before. Will you have enough money on hand to meet your payments when they fall due?
We'll take care of that later. Forget it. But you don't want to forget our fighting men, do you? No, sir. Then you'll have to start saving right away to meet your tax payments. Listen, chum. Spend it. It's your dough. Yeah, it's my dough. Aye, laddie. It's your dough. But it's your war, too. You must save for victory. What's money for? Spend it. Shoot the works. Nay, you must save it. Spend. Save. Spend, save, spend, save, spend, save, spend, save, spend.
Well, now what are you going to do? Spend for the Axis? Or save for taxes? Just remember, every dollar you spend for something you don't need is a dollar spent to help the Axis. That's right. And
All right, so we get the picture here. Pretty powerful form of propaganda there, all right? So obviously this is a video. What's our message here? You need to save your money. You need to be patriotic. You need to support this war. And if you don't, you're supporting the other side. You only have two options here. You save and help, or you spend and hurt, all right? So they're blaming Hitler for the high taxes. This was obviously during World War II. We have a quote, "Thanks to Hitler, taxes are higher than ever before." This is propaganda right here. This is trying to push that idea on you that you need to support your country. And if you're not doing this, then you're supporting the bad side, the bad guys, okay? Spend for the Axis or save for taxes, which is the American thing to do, all right? So you can see they're trying to convince you to think and act a certain way, all right? This isn't to go buy an iPod or buy a Big Mac. This is bigger than that, all right? So that's why this is propaganda. It's forcing you to think another way and act another way. So Stalin propaganda, obviously we don't know these words, but look, smiling, children are happy. He used propaganda to make himself look like a hero of the revolution, all right? He literally had history books rewritten to make it sound like he did all these great things, even though he was a killer. He killed many, many people. There's pictures everywhere of all these good things he's doing. There's constant praise and the media applauds him. So he has the backing of all these people. You're seeing this all the time. It's being drilled into your brain. There's places named after him. Everyone believed, all right, this is like the best guy ever, all right? And he did all these great things for us just because of these pictures and these videos and this praise that he was given, all right? So who else is involved in this Russian Revolution? Well, we talked about Czar Nicholas a little bit. Not a good leader, cruel. He was brutal towards his opponents, but also obviously didn't help out his people very much if they're starving. All right, hired students to be spies to make some money. Some of you might be interested in that. Karl Marx, we talked about him a little bit. He invented that idea of communism. Workers are uniting to own the government, but he dies before any of this happens. All right, he dies before the revolution, and it's because of that he's not involved. His ideas live on, but he does not live to see any of that happen. This guy here is Leon Trotsky. Excellent goatee. He is one of the leaders of the revolution, all right? he followed Marx. He totally believed in these communist ideas, and he's the one that's able to help start to live these ideas out. He wanted to improve life in Russia. He believed in these ideas, and they were going to help, all right? But he was chased away by the KGB, which is like the Russian secret police. So kind of a good figure in all of this, but it doesn't really work out for him, all right? He wants to help, but he's not really allowed to because of these other people opposing him. Like Stalin, all right? Stalin is not a good speaker. He's not educated like Trotsky. Trotsky is a good speaker. He's very smart. Stalin really wasn't a true communist. He wasn't a true follower of Marx. What he wanted was power, and he killed anyone that opposed him. But he made it seem like he was doing all these good things, all right? So he was trying to cover up his tracks. He was the leader of the KGB. He used them to take out his opposition. He allowed church, so he allowed religion, and he used lots of propaganda as well. KGB, just a little bit of background. They're not really actually police. They were just Stalin's basically secret forces, all right? And they just did whatever Stalin said, whether it was legal or right or otherwise. Often killed entire families for disobedience. They were 100% loyal to Stalin. They were really corrupt, but they had so much power that they were allowed to be corrupt, all right? No one could stop them, not even the army. So some of the concepts we're seeing in the Russian Revolution that we will see in Animal Farm, religion, all right? Marx said religion is an opiate of the people, a lie. So an opiate, opioids, it's like a drug, something to take your mind off the pain, all right? So he's saying that religion is just there to take people's minds off all the bad things they're dealing with. It's not real, is what Marx is saying. It's used to make people not complain. It's to keep people in line. Like, oh, if you're good now, things will be better in the future because of your religion and what you believe. All right? Stalin didn't really like religion, but he used it to his advantage. He knew if people had religion, they would be complacent. They would deal with the bad things that were going on in life as long as they would be promised rewards and good things in the afterlife. So he knew this would keep him in power. He could use religion to his advantage. It would stop revolutions. People would not revolt because they'd get complacent, knowing that things would get better for them in the afterlife. Propaganda. Look at this. He's holding a little kid. It's a nice day out. Kid looks happy, has some flowers, the flag. What a nice guy, right? Nope, that's propaganda at work. It's all about image. He's lying, trying to convince people, hey, this is the way. This is what you need to do. You need to follow me. And he benefited from the fact that education was very controlled. Very few people at this time had a high level of education. So it was very easy to lie to them. It was very easy for them to just believe they were gullible. So he used propaganda and it worked because they weren't educated. They didn't know any better. And so communism, same thing here. All people are equal. We've talked about this before. Everyone's the same. Everyone's equal. People run the government. They own the government, but the government controls everything. All right? We talked about this with Karl Marx, the creator of this idea. So some of the citizens of the Russian Revolution, we're almost there. So to be quite honest with you, the people at this time, like looking back on it, the people of Russia in general were viewed as vain. They only cared about themselves. They were selfish, all right? They didn't care about the revolution that much. There's a big group of people that did, like a powerful minority, but the vast majority didn't care. They only thought about themselves. They didn't want to deal with all these issues, so they would leave. They went to other countries that offered more for them. It was all about what could be done for them and not really what they could do to help. So then there was another group, the dedicated but tricked communist supporters. So these people, they believed Stalin because he said he was communist. His actions weren't communist, but he said, hey, I'm a communist. So I'm just like you. We're together, all right? So many stayed loyal to him because of that title, even though it was obvious that he wasn't doing communist things. So they were tricked by that title and those use of words. And these people were betrayed by Stalin. He ignored what they needed for the sake of his own gains, his own power. He killed some of these people, even though they were his followers and they were his supporters. Then you have some people on the outside looking in, okay? Like, what's going on over in Russia? What's going on here? This guy, he's not good news. But they weren't sure the revolution would change anything, so they didn't really care. They realized that, hey, they have a crazy leader, and he can say whatever he wants, and people are going to follow him just because of the propaganda, these titles, these things. He knows how to take advantage of everybody. And they knew communism wouldn't work because Stalin wasn't a communist. He wasn't equal. And if one person isn't equal, then communism is no longer there. He had more power than everyone else. So he broke communism just because of having that power. So these people knew this wasn't going to work because he already broke the system. And so what happened? What ended up happening with the Russian Revolution? Well, Tsar Nicholas, he was ousted. These problems that he had created were supposed to be fixed. People were supposed to be fed. People were supposed to get land. People were supposed to have jobs and money. Life was supposed to get better. But life got even worse. This was actually a negative change of events compared to the already poor decisions that were being made by Tsar Nicholas. Stalin made the Tsar look like a good guy, look like he was doing a good job, okay? So that is just a bit of an overview for what to expect for this book. Some of the main things we're going to be looking at: use of propaganda, the idea of communism, as well as how that works. All right, how did this big ruse, how did this big trick, how did these people get tricked into falling for this guy that was so clearly evil? All right, so that's what we're going to be seeing. Remember, Animal Farm is an allegory. All right, this represents everything that happens in Animal Farm. The characters you see who are animals and the actions that they do and the things that they say, they all represent something that happened in real life by one of the people we've talked about here today, or one of the events that we talked about throughout this Russian Revolution. Thanks for watching. Good luck. Obviously, stay in touch with your teachers. They're here to help, and we're going to make more sense of this soon.